Welcome back to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. And I am your host, Melissa Grosboll. And joining me today is Nerissa Balland. And Nerissa was diagnosed at age 38 with metastatic melanoma while 5 months pregnant and already raising a toddler. Like many young mothers facing cancer, she found herself searching for others who understood what she was experiencing, wondering how they were raising children, coping with uncertainty, and finding their way through one of life's most difficult seasons. That search for connection led her to interview more than 100 young mothers facing cancer. What began as a desire to better understand the emotional experience of cancer became the foundation for her book, Canvas of Courage: The Art of Healing, Hope, and Gratitude for Young Mothers Facing Cancer, and ultimately the direction of her life's work. Although every woman's story was unique, Nerissa discovered that the emotional themes were remarkably similar, revealing shared experiences of identity, connection, courage, and what it means to move forward after life has been profoundly changed. Today, Nerissa is a visual artist, author, speaker, and therapeutic arts practitioner. Grounded in therapeutic arts, informed by creativity research, and enriched by principles from neurolinguistic programming and rational emotive behavior therapy, her work blends lived experience, evidence-informed practices, and creative expression to help people process life's challenges, build resilience, and reconnect with what matters most. So welcome to the show, Nerissa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I wanted to say I'm especially excited today for our conversation because your podcast, The Many Faces of Cancer, really recognizes that cancer touches so many different people, like not just patients, but survivors, caregivers, families, professionals. And I feel a little bit like a tie-dye t-shirt because each one of those categories, if you were to imagine them to be a different color, right, that represents, I'm a cross blend between all of those categories. So I'm really excited to see where our conversation takes us today.
So you wear many of the faces.
I do.
And I love that you used color because being an artist, that is not the first place that my mind goes. So I love that you have that visual of the tie-dye and all of the different colors as well as faces.
Yes.
Very cool. So where do you hail from, Nerissa? Where are you living right now?
I am in South Florida in Fort Lauderdale.
Have you always been there? Are you born and raised there?
No. I've been here a while. I moved here in 2012 from New York City, and I was about 14 years in New York City. But I was born and raised in Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay. So you've always been kind of an East Coast girl.
Yes, I'm an East Coast girl.
And I would imagine with art, New York City and the Miami area, kind of bigger cities, is definitely a better place for that than, say, maybe a suburb of Denver, Colorado.
Well, every community has its arts network if you can find it. It's just a little more prevalent in the urban big city areas. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I have interviewed several people from the UK, and it's very interesting when I talk about the United States. They say if they've even been here to visit, they've been to New York, they've been to Washington, they've been to Miami, they've been to Los Angeles, and they look at just the big cities as places that they come to visit. And I said, someday you have to come to little old Colorado and enjoy the mountains.
Yeah. I have family in Boulder, so I do get out
Okay.
to Colorado, even though
All
I'm
right.
on the East Coast.
All right. Well, Nerissa, so first of all, I want to say I read your book over the weekend, Canvas of Courage, and I highly, highly recommend this book. The stories in there of young women, young mothers going through cancer, trying to raise a family, trying to just be a wife and a mother. They were so inspirational, and I loved every single one of the stories. And they're short, and I love how you have little grace notes at the end of each chapter, just little tidbits that you can take from each story, and then what each of these women kind of took from their cancer experience. And it's just very concise and very well written. And I loved it. I actually listened to it, so I got to have your voice in my ears all weekend long, and the stories were just fantastic. So congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Right. And we will definitely get to that a little later. I wanted to just make sure that I got that in, but I want to start with your story. So take us back to 2016 when you were diagnosed. What was going on in your life? You said in the intro that you were pregnant and you ended up with cancer. So tell us a little bit about that whole experience and what it was like for you.
So I was in my later 30s, and I worked full time as a marketing director. And interestingly enough, in that 2016 period, I was living down in Miami Beach, and the Zika outbreak was all the rage in terms
Oh my
of
gosh, I'd forgotten about that.
right. Yeah, that was a while ago. But they were
Yeah.
doing a lot of aerial spraying. And then there was the concern for any listeners that are like, what is Zika? It was this, potential disease that you get through a mosquito bite or through mosquitoes. And there are a lot in South Florida, especially
The
in the
state bird
summer.
of Florida.
Yeah. Yes. So, and if you are pregnant, there was a much greater risk in terms of what could happen to the fetus. In terms of going through the delivery, and you wouldn't really know until the delivery if there was complications. So I was hiding from Zika and working at home in a makeshift office. And at the time in 2016, because this is pre pandemic, working remotely was not looked upon so greatly. So I had always this constant um, fear brought on by myself, really, that I needed to make sure I was extra available for everybody because I didn't want them to think I was sitting at home pregnant, like eating bonbons and not getting work done. So, so I was home working, and I was actually on a conference call. And when I got the call that I had cancer, um, but I was working. I had a 15-month-old at home. Well, not at home. He was in a preschool daycare during the days, and my husband was at work. So it was an ordinary work weekday, and that suddenly changed very quickly when I got the call. And I know we mentioned earlier, I believe that I had metastatic melanoma. And when I got that call, and I know I mentioned this briefly in the book too, I was a little um, taken back or surprised. First, I had to ask him, my dermatologist, who's also a very good friend of ours and my older son's godfather, but I was like, malignant is the bad kind. I didn't know. I wasn't um, when I had a mole removed off my back, but it was removed 3 times in the same location before it kind of revealed its truth. Um, and I, I didn't feel bad. There was nothing going on where I'm one of these particular cases that went in and I was looking for something. I really wasn't expecting anything, especially because I had had the mole removed several times before. Um, so I had to ask him if malignant was the bad kind, and he said, yes, it's cancer. And then I wanted to double down and say, okay, but is this not the bad cancer? Because we can just scrape this away and it'll
It's
go
just
away.
skin
It's
cancer,
just
right?
skin cancer.
Yeah.
It's not like one of the big cancers. It's not like my grandmother passed away from breast cancer. And so that seemed like that's a bigger cancer. And he was like, no, Nerissa, it's cancer and you need to see an oncologist immediately. And that's where all of a sudden it shook me, where I was like, okay, this is real cancer. And like, am I going to die? That's the first thought that I think a lot of
Well,
people, when you hear those words.
and you shared in the book, and one of the big things that we always talk about is being an advocate for your own care.
Yes.
And your experience with your first oncologist and how that, so tell us a little bit about that story because it's very important for people to know.
Yes. So I quickly, by the time I received the call within 48 hours, I was in an oncology office. I had to quickly get in, be seen. And and I say this because I think it's important because doctors are also human beings and people too, right? Sometimes we put them up on a separate pedestal or godlike, but they're also humans just like us. And they studied and had a degree, and this is their area of expertise. But just because they're world renowned or so forth doesn't necessarily mean that your experience will always be the best with them. So I went into someone who was highly acclaimed, well received. I was very hopeful that I got an appointment in such a quick amount of time to be seen. I went in on a Friday and I was there at noon, and I was seen 6 hours later at 6 p.m. in the evening.
Did they
So I
forget
waited
about
six. No, I don't know what happened. But I was in that waiting room the longest I've ever waited in an oncology waiting room. And we all know, anyone on here that is listening that has been an oncology patient, there are times you have to wait, but that was a very long period.
you? Yes.
I was in that waiting room, and I also didn't see anyone around that looked like me, which is very prevalent to my story later as we continue. But when I say looked like me, I meant someone in their 30s who was pregnant. Uh, it was a much older demographic. And so at 6 p.m., I went in and I saw him, and I spent 10 minutes with him. And I was pretty much dismissed because I was pregnant. And I was, I'll just to sum it up, I think more or less he told me if I wasn't willing to terminate the pregnancy, then he couldn't treat me. And I really see that he saw me more as a liability at that moment. Anyway, needless to say, we left, and I left with dread. I left feeling kind of hopeless at this point. Like, here was supposed to be the best doctor in our area for me to go see. And this was the response. I didn't feel, and neither did my husband, that I was dying in the moment, that it was my life or, my unborn child's life, or or I needed some more answers. So we went and sought a second opinion, and within the week, we found our medical team at a different hospital, and and they saw me and treated me like a whole person. And they did not say that I needed to terminate. We needed to be creative a little bit with some of the treatment and things that we needed to do before I had Teddy. That's my son. Before I had Teddy, so we did that, and it was difficult for sure, but Teddy is also, I will say, both of my children. I have two boys, Eli and Teddy, and they're IVF. So that adds another layer onto pregnancy for me because they're very much planned for, and there was a lot involved in conceiving for them. So I really wasn't ready to just say, yes, I need to terminate this pregnancy. And there was nothing. My concern first was also the child. That does it pass the barrier? Will he have cancer as well? It's a very, very, very small percentage, like a 1% chance or even less, that could happen. So I felt comforted by that, and they do check once you do deliver, they'll take the placenta and they can check it to make sure if any of the cancer cells or anything had passed. And it did not. So, anyhow, I went with that medical team instead for the journey and the duration. And still to this day, I'm with them. So,
And you had said it just, I understand that doctors are human, but you had said you were 5 months pregnant and and this doctor wanted you to terminate your pregnancy at 5 months. That just kind of astounds me a little bit.
yeah. And it wasn't even like, oh, first try. I don't know. Wasn't I mean, this was a
Right.
full grown baby that you could see on that. And obviously, everybody has to make their own decisions. No judgment here. Uh, but that seemed very extreme to me off the bat. It wasn't again saying like, oh, "You're dying tomorrow unless we do this." So
And it wasn't even given to you as an option. It
no.
was, this
Mm-mm.
is what you have to do. And so I'm very grateful. I'm sure Teddy, someday when he understands, will be very grateful that you got a second opinion.
Yes.
Right. And then so when you were first diagnosed, you were not diagnosed as metastatic, correct?
Correct. So when you have melanoma, they can't necessarily say it's metastatic until they do a couple tests
Okay.
to figure that out. So when they do scrape away and do the initial biopsy, that's when they can tell if it's malignant or not. Once it's malignant, then they need to go in and trace through new. Well, first they need to do a wide excision and remove the entire area plus a little more just to get everything clean margins. And that's a surgical procedure, which, by the way, I did on my back. My mole was on my back, and I had to have a 6-inch incision put in to clean out the entire area with no general anesthesia because I was pregnant. And I also couldn't lay on my stomach, which made it more difficult. They didn't have like pregnancy beds for operating rooms where you put your belly in it like they do for
Right.
massages or something. So I had to lay on my side with pillows and a little amount of lidocaine and not move. So
Oh my
that
gosh.
was that was its own little journey of experience there.
I bet.
And the major thing I needed to do, which is what I had to wait for until I gave birth to him, was something called nuclear medicine. And you do this the same day that they set up a surgery as well. So, nuclear medicine, for anyone that's not aware of what that is, it's like this dye that goes into your body, and that dye travels to where the cancer travels. So
Mhm.
if it did travel, it will show you which lymph node areas, whether it's the neck, underarms, or legs, where it helps the medical team know where do we go that we need to test and biopsy those lymph nodes to see if it even spread further. So those are the two things before. So I did the nuclear medicine about 2 weeks after I had him. And from there, that same day, I was set up for bilateral sentinel lymph node removal under my underarms. So I had to do both. It showed that it traveled both, and it did travel to both. They took out the sentinel lymph nodes and a couple other lymph nodes right around it. And then, yes, so at that point, we did that. And then I went into immunotherapy treatments before a year later, I found out it returned again. So,
And that's another thing you shared in your story that I had written down as a question to ask you, because you said that you were on Keytruda, but you did not want a port. And so you actually had the infusions done in IV every time, but you didn't explain why you didn't want a port. So I'm just curious about that.
oh, yeah, no. So I have, I did mention it, but just briefly, I didn't go into it. So I have, and I can never say the name, totally agree. It's like tryptophobia. It's someone who has, just like people have like arachnophobia for spiders or
Right.
claustrophobia for closed spaces. I have a I have an irrational fear. I've been working on it, so much better now. But it exists, and I have this fear that of needles, but not just needles. Like it can still be for an IV because I love when medical teams try to tell me, but it's not a needle. It's just a catheter or a plastic. I'm like, ugh. It's basically anything that is being inserted like into my skin. I freak out. So I have to be sedated.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is why I refused the port, which you might think, oh, okay, but that's going to relieve you from your fear. Well, one was a little bit of vanity. I was 38 and I thought, oh, I don't want to have this like port. I also had young children at home. Having a port, you have to be very delicate. And when you have a toddler and an infant, they're always on your body somewhere.
That's
So
true.
connected to you. Um, so I worried about that. I had the vanity aspect too, which was like, I don't want this scar right up here on this port. And then also just the concept for me to cut into my skin and put the port in. I was like, no, I can't do it. No, I'm not doing it. Uh, that is my only regret if I went back today would be to have that because I only, I had to go back and remove all the lymph nodes of my right arm
Mm.
when the cancer returned. So it's a dead arm. And I only have had for years now my left arm. I don't have great veins to begin with. They're small and they always collapse, and I'm always dehydrated. So I'm never apparently drinking enough water. And I have so much scar tissue buildup now that just for very even simple blood draws or something I need now, it is always complicated. Even just to go in, I do, mammograms every year. And then I'm always followed by an MRI, which is with contrast. And all my CTs are with contrast, which require, that IV to put it in. And I'm sent home multiple times during when I have to go in because they can't get my veins. And often they'll end up going through my hand. And my first infusion treatment, they went through my ankle, and that was
Oh my
very
gosh.
painful.
I
Yeah.
didn't even know that was possible. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
I didn't think I knew that either. But after 5 times, they were like, we can't get anything. We're going to have to go through your ankle. And I was like, ah. So, yeah, it's been
Wow.
fun.
Well, and I think we all have, hindsight is 2020. And I think there are always things that if we could go back, we probably would have done it differently. But, we can't go back and change the past, unfortunately.
We
Maybe
can't.
fortunately, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
All right. So how are you today? I mean, you were metastatic, so this is something that you're going to have for the rest of your life. Do you still have any treatments? Are you kind of in this watch and wait mode at this point, or what's your health like today?
So I'm getting ready to go to my appointment in the next week or so for my 9 year. So I go annually. I have had no evidence detected for almost 9 years. Hopefully, this appointment will give us the same news I've been getting year after year. um,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And yes, so I have been NED, as I like to say. Um, and I am no longer considered to have cancer, so I'm not metastatic anymore.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I didn't know they could take you off of the metastatic list at some point. That's great.
Yeah. So, what would happen is if cancer were to return, I would be staged up. So, I was staged at 3B metastatic melanoma. There is after 3B, it it was just a stage 3 at first. When it returned, they moved me up to a stage 3B, and then it's stage 4. And there's different stages in the metastatic area with melanoma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So we normally consider stage 4 to be metastatic, but in melanoma, 3B is considered metastatic.
Yes.
Okay.
It's considered
Interesting.
metastatic if it's traveled. So if it traveled anywhere in your body from the original origin place that it was in your skin, once it goes in the body, then you moved up. You get the birthday hat for metastatic.
Okay. So moving on, you tell us about your experience, and I'm going to get this wrong because I don't necessarily remember, but you had a lot of limiting beliefs about cancer, and then you actually came to Colorado and had an experience that kind of changed that. So can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yes, I had to go to the West Coast. I had to leave the East Coast to find myself. No, I'm just kidding. um, yes, so during my journey, I Struggled at first. And I'm going to say struggled because I didn't face any processing. I didn't face any processing to what was going on with me. And rightfully so. I was focused on survival. You know,
As most of
survival,
us are at that
right.
point.
And survival is a medical outcome, right? Like it's a medical outcome, but the processing of something that you're going through is a human one. And sometimes you don't have the strength to do both at the same time. And when you're ready, you'll find it. I wasn't ready at first. I was there, just, obviously, anyone that has children listening knows that when they're very young, toddlers and infants are all consuming.
Mhm.
And you are really a caregiver for them in that time before you're even parenting, because you're changing diapers and wiping butts and potty training, and it's the parenting hasn't come in totally yet, but the caregiver skills are really there, the feedings, all of that. So I had traveled to Colorado when the cancer had returned, and at that time the cancer had returned, and I had also found out that I was pregnant, and that pregnancy I had to terminate because the cancer had returned. I was looking to do more surgeries, and I didn't know what this next step was going to involve. And the oncologist said, there's no way that you can keep this child. In addition to the fact that you've been receiving Keytruda and PET scans and CTs on monthly and weekly with the Keytruda, this is just like, Nerissa, I want you to know this is not viable for you. So moving forward, after I had had surgery, and I had a bone biopsy because they thought potentially it could have spread to my bones, and then I had the termination. My husband and I traveled to Colorado to see my uncle, who is really more like a brother in terms of we're only 8 years apart. So it's not that standard niece uncle age group, more like an older brother to me. And I went to visit him and his family, and we didn't take the kids. It was our first trip away from them. And we were waiting for some news to come back on the bone biopsy. And that said, my uncle really wanted me to meet with a man. His name was Ravain Bacall. And he's a coach, and he typically works with men groups, YPO, very successful men, in terms of working on limiting beliefs. So at first I was a little confused because I thought, well, I don't fit that category of the niche of people that he serves. And he said, I'm telling you, just go see him. It's my gift to you. And I was very skeptical of this at first. So I went there. I spent 2 hours on his ranch farm out in Boulder, a little outside of Boulder. I don't know if it was exactly Boulder, but it was around the area. And he really is the moment that I can point to for changing my mindset and where I was. Because I was starting to enter a pretty dark place. Where is this going? And when I was there, I had discovered that I had two beliefs about cancer. And I really wanted to prove him wrong, just because that's the nature of who I am, right? Let's have the debate that you're not going to be able to help me, which, by the way, anyone listening, that's not the way to go into any type of therapeutic setting. You really do want to go in with an open, flexible mindset, which mine wasn't, but I went on the journey anyway and was
I'm going to
pleasantly
prove that
surprised.
you can't help me.
Yes, exactly. So I was there, and I quickly was able to identify when I told him one of my beliefs is that cancer is a death sentence, uh, and prove me wrong that it's not, right? And he very quickly was able to kind of make me eat my words, because it is absolutely not true. Not everybody dies from cancer. So it is not an automatic death sentence. But in my life, the people that had been around me or I had known had all died from cancer. So that was my experience. And we had to dig deeper. And really start to think about other people and might not know them personally, but I know they're alive and they survived cancer. And that's where we were able to disprove that limiting belief, that narrative story that I was repeating in my mind. Like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And we're all going to die someday. So that's inevitable. But it didn't necessarily mean I was going to die from cancer. And so after he really quickly proved me wrong with that one, I said, I have another one. And he's like, okay, let's go for that. What are you thinking? And I said, cancer is bad. So how can you prove to me that cancer isn't bad? Because I was like, I have him here. I've gotcha. There's no way.
Everybody thinks cancer is bad.
Correct.
Right.
And there's a lot of bad about cancer, right? Except it's just the pivoting and how you present that to yourself. So through a little time together in that ranch, I was able to leave there. And my mantra kind of became that cancer is not bad. And I know that to be absolutely true, right? I know it's absolutely true because it enhanced my relationship with my husband. It made me a more present parent. And it also made me a better listener. And I slowed down. And I was always a person moving very fast, very quickly. I process quickly. I move quickly. I do projects quickly. I love to check it off. I've never been great in the slow down, in the patience or the silence or in the breath work. None of that has ever been something that comes easily or as a strength to me. It is something I've had to practice. But I was able to leave there and know that it wasn't. Now, didn't mean that my mind didn't slip back into those things on and off throughout the process. But every day, I just repeated that mantra to myself until that belief became ingrained in my narrative.
That's, and I know, I love how you called that really your pivot point, because it is true. We all have limiting beliefs. And for you to be able to, come out of a 2-hour conversation with him with kind of that change is, well, you process very quickly. So that kind of just proved that piece.
But I had done therapy for years and I never came out of any therapy that quickly with like the light bulb aha moments, you know? And in that moment, which I loved, and for anyone out there, when you're having those light bulb moments, if you have your phone on you, just to take an unfiltered photograph of yourself in the moment that you have your epiphany or your realization or your, okay, like I got this moment, snap a selfie of yourself and keep it. I still have mine. He made me take my phone out and take a picture. And I've always been one that very much cared and curated what my photos look like. So it was like, but I really want to fix it. Like, you know, my face is swollen. I've been crying. I don't look my best. This is terrible. And he's like, that's not what this photograph is for. You don't show it to anybody. It's just for you. And I still have it to this day. And if I'm having a hard moment, I will pull that up.
Oh, that is beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I never thought to do that. That's awesome.
Well, no one thinks to
Of
take
myself
ugly
right
pictures
now,
of
like an
themselves.
aha moment here. All right, Nerissa. Well, let's move on, because I do want to talk about your book. We did talk about it a little bit in the beginning, but I wanna go into a little more detail. What you said that you interviewed over 100 women for this book, and I'm really curious as to how you found or how you narrowed it down to the 19 people that ended up in your book, or 18 plus yourself.
Yeah. So, well, one, there was a lot of women. So I was never going to be able to write 100 stories.
You
But
now have like second and
second and third, make a
right. Yes,
series.
that's what I'm trying to say. Yes.
So what was fascinating, I found the women online. And one thing when I was going through this, which was now 10, 11 years, I guess it's 10 years or so, 2016, I didn't have any support groups at first. It wasn't until 2019 that, and I don't know why I didn't really think about this, but someone's like, well, if you're looking for something, why don't you try Facebook or some groups? And I was like, there's cancer groups on Facebook? Like, that sounded so random to me. I really only used it to like post photos of my kids and communicate with family and friends from far away. So I was like, oh, okay, I've never really gone down looking that way. And then I started finding there were a number of groups. So I started joining. And at first, I was just really an observer. I didn't share a lot, but I was reading from what other people were posting and looking for connection, but not really sure what I was looking to connect with at the moment, just finding groups of mothers that were also diagnosed with cancer. And when I say mothers, and I use the term young mother for me is defined as anyone between, let's say, 20 and 40 years old, because plenty of mothers have cancer and they can be 65, 75, what have you, but in a totally different stage of life. And at that age, you're empty nesters, your children have grown, and
Or
you're
like
not,
mothers with young children.
yeah, mothers with young children. And so I was on these groups, and I started to really notice that all of us, even myself included, introduced ourselves with our prognosis, our stage number, the diagnosis. We never shared anything more human about ourselves. So it was a lot of questions on medical treatments and things that you would think of. What are you using? Anybody have this surgery, etc. But I really wanted to get to know them as people, not just a number or a prognosis or a diagnosis. So I put out there and like kind of an ad, a post on the different groups saying who I was and that I was interested in writing a book. I didn't have any idea what the book was going to be about yet, but I knew that I wanted it to be a collection of stories from other people. And if you were willing to share your story with me, I'd love to interview you. Now, 2020 came in that first quarter of the year. So come March, I was getting flooded with people who were interested and talking online. So I started doing Zoom conversations, and a little over 100 people is who I talked to through the year. And I put that book on hold for a bit. It was a lot to digest. It was a lot.
That's a lot of stories to hear in a short period of time.
It is. And also I have come to learn when I turned 40 that I'm an empath. So I do take on people's stories. It was very hard for me to like hear the story and then go on. I was like wanting to fix everybody, help them find ways. I was worried about them. I would call back. What's going on? So I was having a hard time separating myself from the stories itself. So I did take some time away from writing the book, and I would return every now and then and find ways. And I had often wanted to talk to my husband really a lot about it. And my husband he's wonderful, but he was very much like, I love that you're doing this for you if that's something you need to do, but I do not want to be a part of this. I cannot listen to these stories. I've already lived it with you. So please, I don't come to bed at night and this is how we're ending with like somebody who's suffering greatly. Like I just can't go to sleep like this. So I had to carry a lot of that.
Have a lot in common. My husband was pretty much the same way when I started this podcast, so I understand.
Yes. So I held it. I was like, okay, I have to respect that. I get that. But then I had to hold it all for me. And then I was like, this is a lot. But that's how it started. And how I selected them over time was, first and foremost, I think that I expected our differences to stand out more. But meaning like different diagnosis, marriages, families, support systems. But instead, what struck me was how similar the emotional themes were for all of us, no matter our socioeconomic background, how many children we had, if we were married, divorced, in a good marriage, a bad marriage, had great support systems or bad support systems. Again and again, women kept talking about their identity looking for connection, courage, fear, and then trying to understand who they were now or who they were becoming. And so I began to notice that very successful processing during treatment and after treatment. One thing I noticed was many women stopped asking, why me? Why did this happen to me? Why do I have this cancer? And they started asking, what now?
Mm.
So, why me often doesn't have an answer. You don't have an answer that is solid and concrete. You have guesses. And then it also can bring you down a spiral into a very victim mode mentality. But what now, if you make that slight pivot, it gives us something that we can begin to answer, we can begin to process, and we can have control over. So, those were the areas, in addition to the themes that I saw, um, in rediscovering gratitude and joy in just everyday moments. I found that the different stories, they all shared human experiences. And those were the ones that I decided to write about.
Because I'm sure, and everybody goes through those periods. I'm sure you talked to a lot of women who were very much still in the why me phase and very much into the, I'm going to feel sorry for myself. And we all go through that. And that is definitely a stage that none of us should gloss over, because that pity
Absolutely.
party is something that we all need to experience. And there's a point where we need to move on and still live the rest of our lives. So I love the upbeatness. I mean, this whole podcast is about stories of hope and inspiration. And so this book just goes right along with that. And I love that they were all young mothers, so you could experience kind of what it's like to raise kids. My daughter was 23 when I was diagnosed and no longer in the house. So it was a very different experience for me than it was for you and all these other women. So I just loved all of the stories.
Thank you.
All right, Nerissa, where can people find you? If people want to get a hold of you, if they want more information from you, where can people pick up the book? All the things. What's the best way for people to reach you?
So, my website, which is my name, and I'm sure it'll be in the show notes because it's not
Yes.
a common name, but nerissaballand.com is where you can find information on the Canvas of Courage, which is the book. Um, I also have a free creative reset guide, which you can download as well from that website, learn about my artwork, workshops. And I also have a second book out that by the time this airs, it will be available on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles online as well. But you can find that on nerissaballand.com as well. And that book is called The Curious Curator. And it is a companion book. You don't have to have read Canvas of Courage to pick it up, but it is basically a, I don't like to say a workbook, but I'm saying that now. It's an activity book where there's with creative invitations, with wisdom, insights, and then it gives you an invitation to create, and then a discovery section for reflection on it. And it is no artistic skills are required, no special materials, but it does help you slow down and notice and give yourself permission to have curiosity to discover what you're going through.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I did not even know that. So thank you for sharing that. And the fact that you don't have to have any artistic talent to be able to do that.
None. In fact, if you don't, it's even better.
I'm wondering if maybe I need a little bit of mindset shift, because I say that a lot of times, that I don't have any artistic talent, that creativity is not my strong suit, all of that kind of thing. And maybe it is there somewhere, and I just need to get over this limiting belief that I don't have it.
That's absolutely true because creativity is a human capacity. It's not an artistic credential. So they're two different things.
All right. And I love, go to Nerissa's website. I love all of your art. To me, I know you have a lot with eyes.
Yes, I'm
And so
very big into the evil eye.
yeah. To me, I love the butterfly though. That was probably my most favorite of all of the art that was on your website. I thought it was just so beautiful. Maybe put that onto an iPhone case, and
Okay.
I
I
would
do
love
have
to have that.
iPhone cases, but okay, if you like that one, that's a good idea. I could do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely beautiful.
Thank
All right,
you.
so one final question that I ask of all of my guests. If you were to come across someone who's just diagnosed with cancer or in the midst of the overwhelm of a diagnosis, what is one piece of advice that you would give to that person to just kind of help them get through those initial stages after diagnosis?
Hmm. I would say be gentle with yourself. There, right after an initial diagnosis, there is a lot to process or a lot not to process, depending on who you are. And being kind, gentle, being an advocate for yourself, uh, and and understanding if you have any difficulty with this. And I know many women do, whether you're a mother or not, asking for help. That was a huge connective piece in my book that when those people, those women had a very difficult time, myself included, asking others for help and or even knowing what to ask for help. Um, One, it's okay in the beginning to not know what you need. You'll figure it out quickly, but you do have to ask for help, and support systems are critical. So it doesn't have to be huge if you don't have a large family or people around you, but you do need someone. Yeah. And you're not alone.
And don't try and go through it alone.
No, please don't. I did at first. Well, not alone, but not telling people, wanting to hide it. And honestly, it's much better when you share that information. So,
And let people help you.
yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Nerissa. This was such a great conversation, and congratulations on Canvas of Courage and your new book that should be out by the time we go to air. And
Yes.
I just wish you great success in all your endeavors in the future. And I so appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. I love being here.
Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.